basically, that's the story. The text says that some of the Corinthian Christians, they have been saying that there is no resurrection of the dead. Okay, dead people cannot come back alive, or they are saying, yes, there is a resurrection, but it's just a spiritual resurrection. There will be no future bodily resurrection. Those are some of the things they're saying. And now, chapter 15 is written to answer those challenges by saying, to put it simply, what God did to Jesus, He will do to all who believe. Okay? So that's kind of what 1 Corinthians 15 is. Especially the second part. What God did to Jesus, He will do to all who believe. Apa yang Tuhan lakukan kepada Tuhan Yesus, yaitu membangkitkan Dia dari mati, Dia juga akan lakukan kepada kita. So Jesus' resurrection is the prototype. We're going to be like Him. It's not only that, Jesus is also the way to our resurrection. Now, today, as you open those chapters, actually I have my pointers. So what happens when we deny the resurrection? When we deny the resurrection, several things don't make sense. Okay? When we deny the resurrection, several things do not make sense. And let's read before we look at our text today. This is 1 Corinthians 15, verse 29 to 32. Okay? Why don't we read I read verse 29, you read verse 30 until verse 32. Okay? Let me begin and then your turn. Otherwise, what do people mean by being baptized on behalf of the dead? If the dead are not of grace at all, why are people baptized on their behalf? I protest, brothers, this is Paul, by the way, by my pride in you, which I have in Christ Jesus our Lord, I die every day. Amen. Amen. So, today is very simple. The outline is very clear. If you deny the resurrection, three things won't make sense, okay? Three things are mentioned, okay? So if you deny the resurrection, first of all, the baptism of the dead is useless. Paul's suffering is stupid, and life is meaningless. That's my point for today, okay? If you deny the resurrection, baptism of the dead is useless, Paul's suffering is stupid, and life is meaningless, okay? Let's look at our text today. So, let's start with this weird phrase, baptized on behalf of the dead. That's weird, right? I was preparing, I was like, okay, what is that? In other translations, either baptism on behalf of the dead or baptism for the dead. And the tricky thing is, all commentaries that I read, basically they're saying, well, we're not sure what this means. We're not sure what this means. The Corinthians, they know what it means because obviously Paul did not bother to explain what that is. So that means for the original audience, they know what that means. But we don't know precisely what that means. And people across church history have come up with very creative ways to try to explain this. There's been at least about 10 to 30 interpretations. So if you want to know more, just look those up, right? But I won't bore you with 30 interpretations. I'm sure when I got into number 15, you'll be leaving the church one by one. So the simplest reading of the text, as you can see, is that some Christians were baptized on behalf of someone who has died. So an unbeliever may have died, and then a Christian and baptized on behalf of him. And by the way, this is what the Mormon church is teaching. The Mormon church is teaching you can be baptized. You can be. They're saying basically, lots of people don't know Christ yet. So, but God is so gracious. He wants to give chance for everybody. So, you know what? Let me be baptized for Him. because that's what they're teaching. You can actually open it at their websites. They're using this verse to argue, yes, you can be baptized from the dead. Now, recently, though, it has been other interpretations. Obviously, we cannot take that because it's absolutely went against the New Testament teaching, right? You cannot be saved. You and God is a personal relationship. You can't. Nggak bisa diwakili gitu maksudnya. You can't make your salvation on behalf of someone else. It can't be what? You can't make it a proxy. Proxy salvation does not exist. Ya? Jadi keselamatan yang diwakili itu nggak ada begitu. Proxy salvation does not exist. But some, it's been argued like this though. It's kind of a new argument. So basically, let's say there's a family member is a Christian. Let's say I'm the dad and say, I'm old and I'm about to die and I'm just on a, and I'm Christian, and then he says, and then I'm saying to my son or my daughter, I'm old and I'm leaving soon. I'm about to die. But I know because I believe in Jesus Christ, I'll be in heaven. But I'm still very sad, the dad says. I'm still very sad. And then my son or whoever says, "Why are you sad? I thought you'll be in heaven." Yes, I'll be in heaven with Jesus, but because you don't believe in Jesus, I'll be in heaven. You're not gonna go to heaven. You're gonna go to hell. So I'll be sad without you in heaven. Then I pass away, right? Okay, I don't believe just say that, but and then my son or my family member that got him thinking, okay, so I'm about to die as well. I don't want to end up in hell. So, but I don't want to be separated from my dad. I don't want to be separated from my mom. So you know what? Let me just believe and be baptized. So that's one of the interpretations. So people are going to be they are undergoing baptism so that when they die, they will continue to be with their loved ones in heaven. It's very interesting. And others say, "Oh, this is martyrdom." Others says, "This is not. You cannot take it literally. This is about killing your flesh. This is about dying to your flesh." Okay. Now, the most popular interpretation is actually goes kind of like this. You don't have some of their saying is something like this. So the Corinthians were concerned about believers who die before they get baptized. So maybe an accident or whatever the case, and somehow they fear there's some sort of a spiritual loss there because they have not been baptized. And so, for a very special case, for a special people like a relative or a family member, some believers, let's say the guy's uncle or whatever, is baptized for him. So it's not believers getting baptized for unbelievers like the Mormon church, but believers getting baptized for other believers who has not had the chance to be baptized. So there's one way to, that's kind of the most popular way to look at this verse. But whichever you take it, the overall point is clear. This is what I want to give to you. This symbolic practice, right? A baptism is a symbolic practice. It won't make sense unless there is a resurrection, right? So we can kind of summarize or paraphrase it like this. So if there is no resurrection, why get baptized? That's the point, basically. Because baptized means you are dead and then you are alive, right? Baptized is a symbol of dying and rising with Christ, so that if there is no resurrection, what's the point? What's the point of doing this, sacrament of baptism of means of grace, depending on the church tradition where you come from? Because baptism is what? It's signifying I'm dying and rising again with Christ. That's resurrection, right? So basically, if it's not true, if resurrection is not true, we are just wasting water. It's just wasting water. Think about other people who don't have water, right? So if resurrection is not true, then it's just a weird ritualistic practice. It's just a tradition, right? It doesn't make sense. Have you ever, thought that some of what we do at church is a bit weird? You have water and you drink some juice, and what's the point? Now, as we get to become more and more modern and advanced, okay, I think we can easily look at this kind of symbolic practice, right? Something that is sacred, right? Holy, meaningful. We tend to look at it and underestimate it. Or maybe if I can put it in more stronger word, as we get more and more advanced, more and more modern, science, technology, right? Postmodern, we can easily desacralize things. Yang sakral kita tidak sakral karena biasa begitu. I like to use this illustration, Scooby-Doo. I think I've mentioned this before. If this is the second, third, fifth time you heard it, just nod along and pretend this is the first time, okay? So Scooby-Doo tells the story of 4 teenagers. Fred, Daphne, Velma, Shaggy, right? And the big brown talking dog, Great Dane, named Scooby-Doo, yes. So every episode of Scooby-Doo opens up with what? A mystery, right? A supernatural incident, a monster, right? Something very, okay, what's this? A vampire or thing? Something is out of ordinary, supernatural, right? And the gang usually come to the town where a monster is destroying everything, right? You got names like, some of the names is like, the monster is Indian witch doctor, ape man, snow ghost, demon shark, pocong. Okay, maybe that's not, maybe that's Scooby-Doo Indonesia. But what happens in every episode, as the episode progresses, as you can see, right, the gang gets suspicious. Maybe that's not a real monster, right? They find out here and there, they find clues, they interview people, they confronted the demon, they ran away, got Scooby-Doo with all the snacks, give the snacks and Scooby-Doo chase the ghost, right? And then they, at the end, they set up scenarios to track the monster, right? And then what happened at the end, almost at the end of every episode? The episode always ended with a human primitive, right? Not a real monster, not a supernatural being, but another human person, just a guy, the guy next door, the girl next door, is just usually the guy that you least expected, right? What is the message of Scooby-Doo? The message is kind of like this. The world is all there is. The sin world is all there is. Everything has a rational explanation. Everything can be explained. There is no such thing as the supernatural. As long as you read some science books, technology books, philosophy books, everything can be explained. That's the message in a way. There's no mystery anymore. Personally, I like the word enchantment. Do you know what enchantment is? This is a movie called Enchanted. Enchantment comes from this idea of enchanted means, like you are swept away of your feet. You're caught in a spell. Caught in a spell. Like this world is like, there's still magic around. Enchantment. See, what I'm saying is, although we say we believe in the resurrection, right? We believe in the triune God. We believe that the dead can come back to life. It's easy, we can shift from an enchanted worldview, right? Sebuah wawasan dunia yang kita percaya magic can happen. And we can believe magic, supernatural things do happen. We can shift from an enchanted worldview, we can go to a disenchanted worldview. Everything has explanation. Now in our disenchanted world, it's harder, isn't it? To believe in the spiritual, to believe in the supernatural, to believe in heavenly or miraculous things, especially coming from a more of a traditional Reformed Evangelical Church. It's like, it's hard to believe that anymore. We have shifted from an enchanted worldview where everything can happen, magic can happen, God can intervene, right, anytime, to a disenchanted worldview. Everything has explanation. Just ask Scooby-Doo. See, it's kind of dangerous. Because what? If we no longer believe in the supernatural, do I have that correct? Yeah. If we no longer believe in the supernatural, all we left is the moral. See? That's why church is about just be a good person. See? Just give some more, work some more, pray harder, pray harder, serve harder. It's just about morality. Morality, you go to church, you get advice. You can go to other places of worship, you get advice, by the way. Heck, you don't even have to go to church or places of worship. Just open your YouTube and you go to TED Talks and all. You get advice, you get moral advice, self-advice. Then what's the difference? Christianity and other things. You see, if you take the supernatural, all you left is the moral. Now, I'm not saying that it's bad, okay? I'm not saying it's bad. Gosh, we need more doers of the word than just hearers of the word, right? But if you think about it, if you are completely have a disenchanted Christianity, if I can put it like that, if you completely have this enchanted worldview, you begin to have questions like this. You begin to question like this. To be a good person, do I have to go to church? Right? I mean, I don't have to go to church to be kind. And why do I spend 2 hours plus traffic, right? Why do I can be a good person without going to church? If I give to the poor, if I give to the charity, why should I participate in the community? Doesn't make sense. As long as I do good, right? As long as I'm living good, right? Did you see the implication? And if you don't have to believe in miracles, you don't have to believe in life after death, if you don't have to believe in the resurrection, to practice the golden rule, do unto others as you do unto yourself, then what's the point of believing in any of these things? Now, I'm just saying that, maybe some of you today may feel this disenchanted. There's no magic anymore. Magic, quote unquote, okay? Not magic, Harry Potter magic. Maybe you feel like, you go to work, you get up, you go to work, you go to work that feels meaningless. It's a dead-end job. You interact with people just to kill some time, amuse yourself. You serve in the church, well, because you have time, maybe, or because you look cool playing the guitar, You're baptized, so you can get married, because that's what some people, some need to have baptism license to get married. You worship, you pray, you listen to God's word, but you wonder whether it really works. And you are always thinking, why is it always the other guy that has this amazing testimony? Why it never happens to me? And when good things do happen to you, you might thank God, but inside, maybe in your heart, secretly, maybe you say, you know what? Actually, I work for it. That's my effort, not God. See, we may feel this life is just, on motion, right? Just get up, go to work, go to school, and that's it. Have some friends, and that's it. But the resurrection tells us that none of us is living an ordinary life. That's the message. The resurrection tells us that none of us is just living an ordinary life. Why? Because we used to be dead, and now we are alive. You see, the gospel message, the gospel does not change bad people to good. That's religion. Gospel makes dead people alive. And because we are alive, all the small things that we do is meaningful. Every disappointment, every heartbreak, every failure in our lives because Jesus is alive, because we are alive, all of it can be redeemed. And maybe some of you need to hear this. Church, miracles can happen. Miracles can still happen. What no eye has seen, right? What no ear has heard. What your heart has never imagined or thought of is what God has prepared for those who love Him. Apa yang mata nggak pernah lihat, apa yang telinga nggak pernah dengar, apa yang hati kita nggak pernah pikirkan, itu yang Tuhan sediakan bagi mereka yang mengasihi. Did you see what that means? And then I like Ephesians 3:20. This is the King James Version. Now unto Him that is able to do exceeding abundantly above all that we ask or think, according to the power that worketh in us. I like that. Able to do what? Exceedingly, abundantly, above all. You see? Not just He's able to do more than enough. Exceedingly, above all, abundantly. Simple, isn't it? God can still surprise you. God can still surprise you. And let's be amazed at Him and His ways, always. Even though sometimes we might not feel His presence, however you define His presence. God can still surprise you. Let's not become a disenchanted Christian. Let's keep an enchanted worldview because of the resurrection. Okay, that's the first one. Now, the second point is, if you deny the resurrection, then Paul's suffering is stupid. It's meaningless. If you look with me at verse 30 and verse 32a, in 1 Corinthians 15, it says, why are we in danger every hour? I protest, brothers, by my pride in you, which I have in Christ Jesus our Lord, I die every day. Wow, that's strong. What do I gain if, humanly speaking, I fought with peace at Ephesus? Paul is saying this on a daily basis. He is facing the reality of death. He's painting a picture like fighting with the beast at Ephesus. Now, this is metaphorical, ini figurative, yeah. It's not literal. I don't think Paul will survive if you put him in a cage. And Paul is not some gladiator for amusement, right? So this is he is telling us all the opposition, all the hardships that he is going through. But then Paul kept going. And you know Paul, and I'm just giving you some of the things that he experienced. This chapter, this is 2 Corinthians 11. You just read that, you know. It's very humbling to me. It says, this is what Paul is experiencing. Are they servants of Christ? I'm a better one. I'm talking like a madman, with far greater labors, far more imprisonments, with countless beatings, and often near death. Five times I received at the hands of the Jews the 40 lashes plus one. 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was stoned. 3 times I was shipwrecked. A night and a day I was adrift at the sea. On a frequent journey, in danger from rivers, danger from robbers, danger from all my own people, danger from Gentiles, danger in the city, danger in the wilderness, danger at the sea, danger from false brothers, in toil and hardship, through many a sleepless night, in hunger and thirst, often without food, in cold and exposure, and apart from other things, there is the daily pressure on me of my anxiety from all the churches. Wow, it's even tiring to read that. I mean, if I'm tired of reading that, can you imagine of Paul experiencing that? I'm tired of reading that. I'm like, man, I'm just so far away from Paul. I'm like, I'm nothing with what he's experiencing. I'm just, million years, light years away from what he's experiencing. This is Paul, and he went through all of that. For what? Why, Paul? Why? Because at the mere human level, you see, that's what it's saying in verse 32 here. Humanly speaking, this doesn't make sense. If there is no resurrection, Paul's labor is in vain. It's like, it's like working for a thief. It's like working for a thief. All the hard-earned money will be taken away, and you are left with nothing but what? Feeling sorry for yourself. But why is he doing this? It says, by my pride in you, right? Verse 31. I protest, brothers, he's saying about, by my pride in you. He's saying that, all of this is worth it because I get to show people to Christ. All of this is worth it because there have been people who got saved. Semua ini ako rela melakukan karena ada orang-orang yang diselamatkan. All people made because some people are made right with God. That is, when they die, they will rise again and be with God. So Paul is saying, I'm doing all of this because of you, basically, because of the lost people, because of it. I believe the resurrection as well. There's a story being told by a teenager. His name is Tony. So Tony's parents, they claim to be Christians, but they seem content to do their Christianity just by, strict church attendance. Okay? Tony's father, he was a workaholic. His father is also very abusive, verbally and physically, to Tony. And by the time he reached high school, Tony, he decided to commit suicide. And he says like this: my parents told me that I was bad, that a good Christian boy would obey them. But I just could not meet their expectations. And eventually I gave up trying. My life was misery. I could see no hope. And he said, the only I could see a way out of my misery was suicide. But I was scared of the possibility of hell. Karena satu-satunya aku bisa keluar dari pergumulanku ini adalah bunuh diri. Tapi aku takut masuk neraka. Kalau ada neraka. So Tony tried to find God before he killed himself, just to make sure, just in case, he says. Just in case God exists. If God doesn't exist, okay, I'll just go through with my suicide. Okay. So Tony went to church. And one Sunday he went to church. There's a guy ran up to the podium, gave a testimony. This is a big man. He's giving his testimony, and he said that he has survived 14 years in a communist prison camp in Romania. Some of you might have heard of this story before. For what? Why is he serving more than a decade in a communist prison in Romania? For the crime of being a Lutheran pastor. Richard Rembrandt is his name. He told the church what happened. So he gave stories. He's telling stories how in that prison camp, a communist prison in Romania, he's telling the story how prisoners are branded with red irons. Prisoners hung upside down from a pole while their feet were beaten into a bloody mass. Prisoners locked into narrow closets with metal spikes on the wall. And for religious prisoners, they say, there were special tortures. Buat yang beragama, yang Kristen. Rembrandt told of the pastors in the prison, and I'm sorry this is a bit graphic, but so that you can get a bit of a sense. The pastors, they are forced to give the Lord's Supper in the form of urine and feces. Nangkap ya? Jadi komuni pakai air kencing dan kotoran manusia. Komuni. That's how they're going through. He himself, Rembrandt, endured the worst trial of all, 3 years in solitary confinement in a cell, 30 feet underground. So as Tony listened to this man's story, he can see the scars on his head and his the neck, all of deep scars, visible scars. A flicker of hope arose within Tony. And he said, here's a man. He went through all this pain, all this degradation. He's treated like animals, right? So, sepertinya sudah nggak dimanusiakan lagi, gitu. And yet, Richard Rembrandt, came back still with a faith. He can still believe that God is good, that God is alive, that Christianity is true. Tony says, humanly speaking, he should have been mad. No, mad is just, he should have been furious with his captors, but no, Rembrandt, instead he responded in love. To that for Tony, it clicked something in him. When Tony saw that, listen to Richard Rembrandt. This is Christianity in practice, right? This is experiential faith, not just intellectual. This is transformative power. After that memorable Sunday, Tony began to read the Bible, and over time, he too discovered faith strong enough that get him out of the despair of suicide. You see, people are attracted to the gospel not simply because of what it says or what it teaches, but because of what it does to real people in real life. Right? Orang tertarik kepada Injil bukan cuma karena apa yang diajarkan, bukan cuma karena apa yang diberitakan, tetapi karena apa yang terjadi sungguhan. Not what it teaches, not what it says, but what it does to real people in real faith, in real life. See, I realized this. Actually, we had some we made an event a couple of days ago. We had discussion with atheists and agnostics, and here I am thinking, they're asking us some questions, and I'm trying to answer them, and I'm thinking about, at the end of the day, I may do a good job. I don't know if I did, by the way. I don't know. We may do a good job at arguing about Christianity. We may do a good job at debating and giving good, solid answers. But then they will not find our message, really persuasive unless we show them our life. That's what I'm saying. Unless we show them our lives. And this is very something very convicting to me as well. One author puts it like this. She's saying, outsiders must be able to see for themselves in the day-to-day pattern of our lives that we do not treat Christianity as just a private retreat, a comfort blanket, a castle of fairy tale beliefs that merely make us feel better. And how do people see that? People must be able to see that we have the resurrection power, right? That we are really living our faith. That we are really somehow menghidupi, indwelling the supernatural dimension of love, power, joy, goodness in the way we live, in the way we treat one another. If not, it's just empty talk. Because it's not the quantity of our words that bring people to Christ, but it's the quality of our lives. Now, I wrote that, and I was like, okay, I'm far from that. But this is what's true. People need to see the quality, the weight of our lives, right? And yes, we are sinners. We are still sinners. We are still in progress. But we must not forget our priority. That the most important thing about our lives is not to gain just knowledge, but to gain spiritual growth, isn't it? So that we have the quality that can witness to people. It's not the quantity of our words, but the quality of our lives. Finally, last one. If you deny the resurrection, life is meaningless. Verse 32, last one says, if the dead are not raised, Paul is saying, let us eat, drink, for tomorrow we die. That's just, if there is no afterlife, there's no judgments, let's just have fun, right? Like the campaign on the atheist bus in London. There's probably no God, right? There's probably no God, so just enjoy your life, right? Paul is quoting actually from the book of the Old Testament. It says that in Isaiah 22. So the story is the people of Jerusalem, they're being attacked. Okay, they're being attacked by the army from Assyria, and they're facing doom. Annihilation is coming. But instead of repenting, the people in Jerusalem, they do what? They party. They party. We can't do anything about it. Just party like there's no tomorrow. And this saying actually, let us eat and drink for tomorrow we die, is actually a popular saying in those days. It's a popular slogan. So it's like they're almost that worldview. Let's just have fun with our lives now. If there is no afterlife, let's just have fun with our lives now. See, people often say that they don't need God in their life because I'm as happy as I am, right? If you think about it, we have, like I mentioned previously, we have all this modern science, we have this technology, globalization, and if you can see all around us, especially in Surabaya Barat, right, in the west part of Surabaya, people have good jobs, they have good career perhaps, and you may feel like, I have no problem with money, I have no problem with travel, I have no problem with life. Why do I need God, right? Why do I need God? I'm happy. So far in my life, I'm happy. Why do I need God? I'm happy. I can just party like there's no tomorrow. What do I say to those people? What do I say when I too also feel sometimes say like that? Well, I say, that's great, right? That's great if you're happy. Great, praise the Lord. Do you know that happiness is a gift from God? Happiness is a gift from God. In Acts 14:17 says, God fills your heart with joy. Happiness is a gift from God. But see, just want to remind you today that life is more than just happiness. Life is more than just feeling good about yourself. Life is also about truth, right? Life is also about meaning. Life is also about purpose. Did you see, when pleasure, hedonistic pleasure. Hedonistic means a person who lives to maximize pleasure and minimize pain. Right? When you live only for pleasure, I think you can become less than human. You can become less than human. Saat kita cuma hidup demi kesenangan atau hawa nafsu, gitu ya, lama-kelamaan kita menjadi sedikit kurang dari manusia. There's this old experiment. Maybe you've read this when you were doing your science class. So there's this experiment in the 50s actually, psychologists, Olds and Milner, they designed this experiment with rats, okay? So basically you put rats on a box, as you can see, and you stimulate their brain. Every time the rats press the lever, okay, it's going to send, the stimulator is going to send an electric signal to his brain, and it says, this is good, this is pleasure. So there's a reward circuit going on, okay? So there's a direct brain stimulation, and then whenever the rat presses the lever, it feels pleasure. Now, I don't know what exactly it feels, because I'm not a rat, so, but you get the point. So what resulted with this experiment is probably, one of the most dramatic in the history of behavioral neuroscience. You know what happened? Rats would press the lever as many as 7,000 times per hour to stimulate their brains. 7,000 times per hour. This was the pleasure center, okay? And they've done follow-up experiments on that, and they found out rats, they even prefer this stimulation even when they're hungry. They basically prefer to press the lever than to eat. They prefer to press the lever than to drink. It's like that. Some even they keep pressing the lever even there's a female inside, and even female rats, they will abandon their pups and keep pressing the lever. Keep pressing the lever. And finally, some of the rats, they actually had to be unhooked from the stimulator. If not, they're gonna be starving to death. It's like that. So basically, pressing the lever becomes their entire world. This is what they do without sleep, without eating, without drinking, without socializing, without nursing their pups. Now, you might say, but that's animals. We are not rats. Of course, we're not rats. Except that we can see a modern version of this stimulation in forms of addiction, right? Addiction. We might not get addicted to a lever, but we can be addicted to pleasure in forms of other things. The point is simple. You see, actually, just on the side, a bonus. There have been studies doing this to people, to cure some mental disorder. So some people have chronic pain, and then they, put it the stimulator, and then he's pressing the lever. But that's kind of a bit unethical, and I won't bore you with some of the dark side of the psychological experiment. But the point is simple. This thing even works on a person. They kept pressing the lever just to get the stimulation. The point is simple. When we live only for pleasure, there's a loss of humanity. Right? At worst, one might say we are nothing more than just elevated animals. At worst. But then, what is then true humanity? Right? What is true humanity? Well, you see Jesus. You see, think about it. Jesus. If there is a person who is as happy as they can be, experiencing, the most delight in the universe, who can that be? The triune God, right? The triune God. Jesus is happy. He doesn't need anyone. He doesn't need anything. Why? Because the guy is in perfect relationship with God the Father and God the Holy Spirit, right? The triune gods, like a dance, Lewis says, they are happy. See, God did not have to create the world. He could have stayed happy. He could have stayed away from all the mess, all the brokenness, right? He could have stayed in heaven where pleasure is maximal and pain is zero. Instead, And this is the amazing thing about Christianity, isn't it? Instead, God created the world. A world that will be broken by His creatures. Not only that, God can still, I choose to stay away from you guys. You just make your own mess, Just become the God of deism, right? Just, run the clock and then leave it alone. God can do that. He can still be happy, and all of us probably will end up in hell because we deserve it. But no, right? God did not only just create, He went into the world. Kind of looking into the mess. He chose to enter the world as human being. He chose to experience, in a way, pain, tears, sweat, hunger, thirst, betrayal, suffering, and death. Why? Love, right? For God so loved the world, He gave His only Son. So whoever believes in His name might be saved and may have eternal life. Love. So you see, so the secret to life is not pleasure. This is what we can learn from Jesus. He has all His happiness, and yet He created us. We made a mess, and He didn't just leave us alone. He became one of us. He died for us. He rose again. Why? Love. Why? Because the secret to life is love. That's what He's teaching us, I think. The secret to life is love. The main ingredient that makes the world worth living for is sacrificial love. What is resurrection but the victory of love, right? Resurrection is the victory of love. A love that did not give up even faced with death. See, Jesus does want us to be happy. Yes, He wants us to be happy. And He promised that we will be happy for all eternity. He promised that. But see, Jesus doesn't just want us to be happy. That's the difference. He doesn't just want us to be happy. He wants our lives to be much grander, much nobler than that. That is to live for Him, to live for His purpose in His kingdom. And I end with one of my favorite quote. This is Louis saying, look for yourself, and you will find in the long run only hatred, loneliness, despair, rage, ruin, and decay. But look for Christ, and you will find Him, and with Him, everything else. Did you get that? He's saying that, if you are only looking for yourself, you're only finding all the opposite things. But if you look at Christ first, not only do you get Christ, but everything else that you ever want and need in life. Let's pray.